Welcome back to Mr. Ace Math. This lesson is on area and circumference of a circle. Some stuff you should know already are basically what circles are, what the radius is, the diameter, basically just the basic parts of a circle, as well as perimeter because we do make a reference to it. So make sure you know those things and let's get started. So first of all, what exactly is circumference? Well, circumference is like the perimeter for a circle. Now, shapes like triangles and squares have perimeter, which measure the outside or how long the shape is around. This is basically the same exact thing, but for a circle. It's the distance around the outside of a circle. So let's say here we have a circle, and we start from here. And we go around the circle entirely back to where we started. That distance there, that length there from here all the way around, that would be the circumference of the circle. So diameter, we need to make sure we know what diameter is. Now diameter is a line crossing from one side of the circle to the other through the center. That's very important. Through the center. If it doesn't go through the center, it's actually something else. It's something called a chord. So you have to make sure that you know the diameter goes through the center. So here we have our circle. The line going from one side through the center of the circle all the way across the other side is a diameter. Now, it doesn't matter how the diameter looks. What I really mean by that is it doesn't matter if it goes directly across from the left side of the circle to the right side of the circle. It can look however it needs to. As long as it fits that criteria, this is also a diameter because it still goes from one side of the circle through the center across to the other side. This here is also a diameter. Again, doesn't matter how it looks. As long as it goes from one side of the circle through the other side of the circle, through the center, it is still technically a diameter. And it's really important to make sure you know that all diameters are the same length. So for example, if this diameter here is 20 feet, then this diameter here is also 20 feet, and this diameter here is also 20 feet. Doesn't make a difference if it's in the same circle and they all go through the center of the circle. If they are all diameters, for the same circle, they all have the same length. Radius. Well, what exactly is radius? Radius is a line crossing from one side of the circle to the center. It doesn't go through the other side, it actually stops right at the center. So for example, here we have a radius, and just like with diameter, it doesn't matter how it looks. It can look like this, it can go from the left side of the circle to the center, it can go from the center to here, it can go from the center to here. It doesn't really matter. As long as it fits that criteria, it goes from the center to the side of the circle, and that's it. And just like with the diameter, all radii, this word here, don't get fooled by it, this word is radii, it's just more than one radius. All radii are the same length. So, if this radius here is 4 yards, then this radius here is also 4 yards, and this radius here is also 4 yards. Again, doesn't matter how it looks, as long as there's a radius inside the same circle, it will be the same size as all of the other radii. So let's start with the circumference formula. The circumference formula is pretty straightforward and pretty simple to use. It's C equals D pi. C represents circumference equals D represents diameter times pi. So, well, what do we know about the circle? We know that the circle's diameter is 20 feet. So, wherever we see diameter, we're going to put 20 feet. So let's plug everything that we have in. Circumference equals 20 pi. The diameter is 20, so now we have 20 pi. Now it's important to understand that here we have an answer. There's really no other work to do aside from multiplying by pi, but this is an answer that you can get without using a calculator, and that's very important. Most of the time you'll be asked to leave your answer in terms of pi. Now that's exactly what we have here. It's called in terms of pi because there's nothing else to do aside from multiplying the number that we have here, in this case which is 20, and multiply the 20 that we have times pi. The only other thing left to do is to use pi in the calculator button, and that's going to be 20 times 3.14159, and it goes on and on. The best thing to do is to know exactly where to round it to. In this case, what we're going to do is we're going to round all of our answers to the nearest tenth. So in this case, it's going to be circumference equals approximately 62.8 feet. Now let's take a second to think about how that relates back to what we're talking about. We're saying that the circumference is approximately equal to 62.8 feet, roughly around 63 feet. What that means is if we start from here on the circle and we go all the way around the circle, and we go back to where we started, we would have traveled a total of approximately 62.8 feet. Now in this example, it's a little bit different. We should always start with the formula. Here we have circumference equals diameter times pi, which is good, but we have to make sure we know exactly what the diameter is. In this question, we're not given the diameter. What are we given? We're given the radius, and they give us that the radius is 3.2 yards. Now if the radius is 3.2 yards, two radii together, for example, if we started here, went across to the center of the circle, that's 3.2 yards. So another radius attached to that would give us a diameter, and that would be an additional 3.2 yards. So that means that our diameter would actually be 3.2 and 3.2 together, which makes 6.4. So right now our circumference is equal to 6.4 pi. And that's called having our answer in terms of pi, because all we're left with is our number times pi. So let's just do that. What's 6.4 times pi? That's going to give us the circumference equals approximately 201.1 yards. Again, let's relate that to what we're talking about. We're talking about circumference. That means if I start here on the circle and I go all the way around the outside of the circle, I would have traveled 201.1 yards. And in this example, again, we should always start with the formula itself, circumference equals diameter times pi. I'm given that the diameter is 12 feet. Since my diameter is 12 feet, I literally just plug that in for the diameter, and I'm left with circumference equals 12 pi. Well, that's my answer in terms of pi, because again, all I have left is the number itself, the number 12, and the pi there. Okay? So the only thing that I have left to do is multiply 12 times pi. Well, let's do that. That's going to be 12 times approximately 3.14159. Again, it goes on. And that's going to give us circumference equals approximately 38 feet. Now, if a circumference is 38 feet, again, what that means, always think about the meaning of words and what it refers to back when you're talking about the problem. If we start here and go around the entire outside of the circle, that means we would travel approximately 38 feet. Okay, so that was circumference we were talking about. Circumference talks about the outside, or how long the outside of a circle is. Basically the perimeter for a circle. What exactly is area? Well, that doesn't change between circles and regular shapes. The area is the number of square units within the circle. And it's normally a decimal. Well, why is it that the answer for area of a circle is normally a decimal? Here's why. First of all, let's take our circle and break it up into square units. Now, these yellow squares are actual complete squares. Well, the problem is that with a circle, you have all these squares here, all these square units that are actually incomplete. They're in bits and pieces. And that's exactly why we use a decimal to represent our answer whenever we're talking about the area of a circle, because we're never actually having complete squares. So it's always going to end up being a decimal. Now, let's start with the area formula. The area formula is A equals pi r squared. R stands for the radius. In this example, we have a diameter of 20. Now, it's important that you know that. We don't have a radius, we have a diameter of 20. Well, since the diameter is 20, we should know that the radius is half of the diameter, and that's going to give us a radius of 10. So when we plug in 10, now we have area is equal to pi times 10 squared. And now what we have to do is square 10. 10 squared is 10 times 10, which is 100. So now I have the area is equal to 100 pi. Now, it doesn't really matter that I change the position of the number and the pi symbol. Okay? The reason why that doesn't matter is because multiplication is commutative. If I have 2 times 3, it's going to give me the same thing as if I had 3 times 2. So now that I have area equals 100 pi, this is called having my answer in terms of pi, because like we did before with circumference, we just have the number and the pi symbol. And the very last step is to multiply, and that's going to give us approximately 314.2 feet squared. In this example, we have a radius of 3.2 yards. Now, we always start with the formula. A equals pi r squared. The area of the circle is equal to pi times the radius squared. Well, what's the radius of our circle? We just said it's 3.2, so we'll plug that in. Area equals pi, 3.2 is my radius, squared. So now what's 3.2 squared? 3.2 squared is going to be 3.2 times 3.2, and that gives me 10.24 pi. So my area is 10.24 pi. Well, that's having my answer in terms of pi. Now that I have my answer in terms of pi, the only thing that I have left to do is multiply pi times 10.24. So the area is approximately 32.2 yards squared. And again, what does that mean? That means if I were to cut my circle into squares, that there would be approximately 32.2 square yards within the inside of the circle. In this example, as with all the examples, we should always start with the formula. Area equals pi r squared. Well, what do I have here? I have this is 12 feet. But first of all, what is this? Is this a diameter or is this a radius? Well, it's a diameter because it goes across the circle through the center. We should know that the radius is half of the diameter. If the diameter is 12 feet, then our radius is going to be 6 feet. So we plug that in. Area equals pi times 6 squared. Well, what's 6 squared? 6 squared is just 6 times 6. That's going to be 36 pi. This is my answer in terms of pi. It's called having our answer in terms of pi because we only have the number itself times pi remaining. That's the only remaining work we have. And now, when we use pi in the calculator, that's going to give us area equals approximately 113.1 feet squared. Again, what does that mean? That means that if I were to take this circle here, the entire circle, and cut it up into square feet, there would be 113 tiny boxes inside the circle, approximately 113. So here's your pause and practice. Just pause and practice. When you're done, unpause the video. After a 3, 2, 1 countdown, your answers will be displayed. Go. Okay, so let's go over these answers. For the circle on the left, our circumference is approximately 45.6 feet. Again, what that means is if we start here at the top of the circle and go all the way around, we would have traveled a total distance of 45.6 feet. And the area is approximately 165.1 feet squared. What that means is if we cut the inside of the circle into square feet, we would have approximately 165.1 squares. For the circle on the right, the circumference equals approximately 94.2 yards. What that means is if we start at the top of the circle and go all the way around, we would have traveled a total distance of 94.2 yards. And the area is approximately 706.9 square yards. And what that means is if we cut the inside of the circle into square yards, we would have approximately 706 square yards. A line that goes from the center of the circle to the circle itself is called a radius. A line that goes from one side of the circle to the other through the center is called the diameter. The distance around the circle is called the circumference. And the number of square units within a circle is called the area. Now, I want to take a second to address something that I might have said earlier in the lesson. I believe I said that a radius goes from the center of the circle to the side of the circle. And I think here for diameter, I said it goes from one side of the circle to the other side of the circle to the center. Remember, a circle doesn't have sides. What I really meant was it goes from one part of the circle through to the other side of the circle through the center. The diameter is blank the size of the radius. Well, the diameter is twice the size of the radius. If the radius is 5 meters, then the diameter is going to be 10 meters. If the radius is 30 meters, then the diameter is going to be 60 meters. The radius is blank the size of the diameter. Well, that's half. If the diameter was 100 feet, then the radius would be 50 feet. The formula for the circumference of a circle is, very important, C equals d pi. So the circumference is equal to the diameter times pi. And the formula for the area of a circle is area equals pi r squared, where r stands for the radius. So area equals pi times radius squared.
Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Questions? Comments? Leave them down below.
And thanks for using Mr. Ace Math. Don't just pass math, ace it.